Welcome to the recording of the Leading Sheep webinar on using EIDs in sheep. This webinar was presented on the 10th of May 2018 by Phil Holmes and Anthony Uren. This is part one in a series of short recordings from this webinar, with Phil Holmes giving some background and an introduction to objective measurement and EIDs.
I have to say up front that, I've thought about this topic for a long time, or since the invitation was extended, and for the life of me, I can't see how I can make a blanket recommendation to every sheep producer out there for the use of ID or electronic ID. It really comes down to how you breed your sheep and what your breeding objective is. And if it's based on objective measurement, then that's fine. EID has a huge place, as Anthony will explain. If it's more traditional, then I really struggle to see how that can fit in. So let me explain how I got to that. Firstly, some history. I began my professional career as a vet 40 years ago down near Dubbo. To be frank, I wasn't a very good vet, and after about 7 years, I decided to get out of that and go into consulting, and my passion was sheep. At the end of that period as a vet, I took 2 years out to travel around Australia with a professional sheep closer. He was one of the 3 or 4, I guess, gods at the time, and I wanted to learn all about the traditional side of the industry, because if you are going to sit up there and present a contrary view, you've got to understand what you're criticising. So I wanted to learn all I could. So I went all over Australia with this particular fellow, and went into the parent studs that were around at the time, had a really good insight to what was going on, and I felt I understood where the industry had been for a long time and where that process was going. I couldn't see where it was going to take the industry going forward. That was my view. I wanted evidence, and there was no evidence that it was going to do any good. So that satisfied my need to go forward with the objective side, which I did. At that time, the Trangie Research Station in New South Wales had been cranking up the first solid data on objective measurement. And the two people who started that were Fred Morley and Helen Newton-Turner, and they set up the initial selection flocks for objective measurement. I was so fortunate to have been mentored by Fred for a long time after that. His advice helped me get to the point where I am now. Back at that time, that was back in the dinosaur era, which unfortunately I'm a member of. And there's one thing about dinosaurs, they can go back a long way and remember a lot of stuff, but in the end, they become extinct. So going back and looking at all of that, and having had the benefit of being mentored by Fred, I was able to confirm in my own mind, at least, that if you wanted to produce wool profitably, you had to involve objective measurement. At that time, there was nothing there to help. There were no indexes, there was not much available. All there was sending your wool sample off to the lab, and you got some measurements back. There was fleece weighing if you wanted to do it, but not much else. No indexes, no nothing. Anyway, that progressed, and over time, everything began to fall into place, and there became two camps after a while: the objective measurement group and the traditionals. More latterly, there's been some distractions with dual-purpose sheep, and considering that sheep production could do two things, produce meat and wool, my experience has been that sheep are a specialist game. You either produce meat or you produce wool. And in either case, there is a main product and a byproduct. If you've got a specialist sheep flock, wool will probably be around 70 to 80% of income going forward, and the meat side is a byproduct. In the case of meat sheep, meat will be probably 90% of income, and wool will be just a byproduct. So sitting on the fence in the middle ground on the basis of all the evidence I've got from benchmarking suggests that you just won't do a very good job on either. You have to specialise. Getting to today, the path that I've gone down is to, my focus has been on wool production predominantly. I'm afraid that I won't have a lot to say about meat sheep. I have meat sheep data and clients, but my focus is on wool. So getting down to today, it's all about fleece value. You know, what are you paid for when you grow wool? At the end of the day, you're paid for what's riding on the back of the sheep that you run. What have you got there? Have you got a fleece worth $100 or a fleece worth, 30, 40, 20, whatever bucks? That's the process, and that will determine how your business goes forward. Okay, if you accept that, which some people won't, but if you accept that, how do you get to breed those sheep that are $100 fleece? You can't do it visually. You can't do it with the traditional methods. We now have the tools, the knowledge, the science, the economics, the technology. We've got all that now to produce those $100 fleeces. The old methods just can't do that. At the moment and going forward, I think using the genetic knowledge and monitoring that by economics and using technology to do it is the way forward. And this is where EID fits in. I honestly don't know how to recommend EID for a flock where there is no measurement, no objective measurement. I don't know how to do it. I'm not suggesting in saying that people who choose to go down that path are inferior in any way. I'm just saying that I can't say to you folk who choose that path how EID will help. EID is a technology thing, and it marries into genetics and objective measurement. That's pretty much it. Where are we today? We're in a state where the wool industry has gone through, and the lamb industry, but particularly the wool industry. The wool industry has gone through a state where there's been so many distractions. Not long after I went down my path, the reserve price scheme arrived, and my God, how corrupting was that whole thing. We had this reserve price scheme set up where it was all about, the mentality was all about filling the bales. It didn't matter what you did, just fill the bales and get the kilos out. The price was guaranteed. It was a disaster financially, and the evidence is there for that. The other thing is that when RPS arrived, sheep classes, who were guides at the time, started to focus on fleece weight to fill the bales at the expense of everything else. No concept of fleece value at all. None. Because it just didn't exist then. And so we've had these things coming on the scene for sheep and wool growing for a long time now that have just distracted us from the real issue. The real issue is how much wool is on the back of your sheep. Is it $100 or is it $30, $20 or whatever? That's the key issue, because that's the thing that determines business performance.
Thank you for watching this part of the recording from the Leading Sheep webinar on using EIDs in sheep. If you have any questions or would like more information, please visit the Leading Sheep website, www.leadingsheep.com.au.